Admiral Jake Morrison stood before the memorial wall in Earth Command, reading the names etched into black stone. 5 years had passed since the day that changed everything, and the galaxy still struggled to understand what humanity had become. The memorial listed every being who had died aboard the Corellian fleet, nearly 1 million names in flowing alien script that few humans could read. The old admiral moved slowly now, his hair completely gray and his shoulders bent with the weight of years and responsibility. Behind him, Captain Emma Foster waited patiently. Emma had been his protege since the war, and now commanded Earth's newest dreadnought, the Defiance. She would be taking over fleet operations when Jake finally retired next month. "Do you ever wonder if we made the right choice?" Jake asked, without turning around. Emma considered the question carefully. She had been a junior officer during the Corellian crisis, watching from the sidelines as her superiors made decisions that reshaped galactic civilization. "We saved Earth, Admiral. We saved our species. How could that be wrong?" "By becoming the very thing we feared," Jake replied softly. "Look what we've built, Emma. 47 allied species, a fleet that spans 200 star systems, weapons that can crack planets. We're the largest empire in galactic history, and we tell ourselves we're just peacekeepers." The numbers were staggering when laid out plainly. The Human Alliance controlled more territory than the Corellian Empire had at its peak. Their combined military forces could challenge any 3 major powers simultaneously. Trade flowed through. Human-controlled space routes and disputes were settled by human mediators. Dr. Lisa Grant entered the memorial chamber, her face showing the strain of recent weeks. As Director of Advanced Defense Research, she had been working around the clock to address the latest crisis. The investigations into quantum physics had finally yielded results, and 3 different species had successfully tested their own versions of reality-warping weapons. "The Tellurian Federation completed their gravity cannon tests this morning," Lisa reported. "Complete success. They can collapse matter into singularities just like our disruptors. The Andromedans aren't far behind." With their dimensional rifts technology, Jake finally turned from the memorial wall, his expression grim. "How long before they're ready for deployment?" 6 months, maybe less. And once they start mass production, every major power will want their own superweapons. "We've started something that we can't control anymore." The irony was bitter. Humanity's secret weapon had remained secret for exactly 3 years before theoretical physicists across the galaxy began developing similar technologies. The quantum disruptor network still gave Earth a significant advantage, but that advantage was shrinking rapidly. Emma activated a holographic display showing current galactic politics. The Human Alliance territories glowed blue, but they were surrounded by yellow zones indicating neutral powers that were rapidly militarizing. Red markers showed confirmed superweapon development sites. "President Collins is meeting with the Galactic Council tomorrow," Emma reported. "They're demanding full disclosure of our weapons technology and joint oversight of all superweapon programs." "What's our position?" Jake asked. "The same it's been for 5 years. We maintain that the Corellian fleet destruction was an accident, and we possess no weapons beyond conventional technology. But nobody believes us anymore." Jake walked to the observation windows, looking out at Earth's orbital defense platforms. The quantum disruptor satellites were still hidden among the asteroids, still capable of destroying any fleet that threatened humanity's home world. But their existence had become an open secret, discussed in every intelligence briefing and diplomatic meeting across the galaxy. A communication alert chimed, and Admiral Chris Taylor appeared on the main screen from Luna Station. Chris had aged rapidly in his role as fleet commander, dealing with constant crises as humanity tried to maintain order in an increasingly chaotic galaxy. Jake, we have a situation developing. Grand Admiral Zefek has requested a private meeting with you. Zefek? Jake was surprised. The former Corellian commander had spent 5 years as a refugee on Earth, his own people considering him mentally unstable after his reports about impossible weapons. What does he want? He says he has information about the forces gathering in the void between. Something about ancient civilizations and galactic cycles. He'll only speak to you. Jake exchanged glances with Lisa and Emma. The mysterious construction activity beyond the galactic rim had been growing for months, with long-range sensors detecting massive structures being built in the empty space between galaxies. No known species claimed responsibility for the activity. Send him down, Jake decided. Conference room 7, maximum security. An hour later, Jake sat across from the alien who had once commanded the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. Zefek looked old and broken, his scales dulled and his once proud bearing reduced to a nervous slouch. But his eyes still held intelligence, and his voice was steady when he spoke. Admiral Morrison, Zefek began in careful English, I must tell you something that my own people will not hear. The forces in the void between, they are not unknown. They are ancient, older than any current civilization. Go on, Jake said, leaning forward. My species keeps records going back 50,000 years. Deep in our archives are warnings about the Watchers, beings who observe galactic development and intervene when civilizations become too powerful. They have done this before, many times. Lisa activated her recording equipment. What kind of intervention? Total extinction. They appear at the height of galactic civilization, when wars threaten to destroy star systems and weapons can remake reality itself. They eliminate all advanced species and allow evolution to begin again. Emma frowned. That's just mythology. Surely. Zefek's expression was deadly serious. 5 years ago, I would have agreed, but then I saw 800 ships vanish into nothing, destroyed by weapons that should not exist. Your species has triggered something, Admiral. The Watchers are returning. Jake felt a chill run through him. How do you know this? Because they contacted me 3 days ago while I walked in your gardens. A voice in my mind, speaking in the old tongue that only Corellian priests remember. They wanted to know about humanity's weapons, about the day my fleet died. What did you tell them? The truth. That you possess technology beyond current understanding, capable of destroying entire fleets without trace. They were pleased to hear this confirmation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Zefek was telling the truth, humanity's demonstration of power had attracted the attention of beings far more advanced and dangerous than any known species. Dr. Grant was the first to speak. The construction activity in the void between. You think that's them? I am certain of it. They are building what our archives call cleansing stations, massive installations capable of sterilizing entire star systems simultaneously. When they are complete, the galactic reset will begin. Jake stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed so friendly. How long do we have? The archives speak of preparation times measured in years, not decades. Once they decide a galaxy has become too dangerous, they act swiftly. Emma was studying tactical displays on her tablet. If this is true, we need to warn the other powers. Unite the galaxy against this threat. Zefek laughed bitterly. Unite! Admiral, your species has spent 5 years destabilizing galactic politics with your mysterious powers. Half the galaxy fears you. The other half wants to become you. The Watchers could not have asked for better conditions to justify their intervention. Jake returned to the table, his expression grim. What do you suggest we do? Reveal the truth about your weapons. Show the galaxy that you developed quantum disruptors to defend yourselves, not to conquer others. Give them hope that the technology can be used to fight the Watchers instead of each other. And if we do that, every species will want their own quantum disruptors, Lisa pointed out. The arms race will accelerate exponentially. Better an armed galaxy than a dead one, Zefek replied simply. Jake thought about President Collins, dealing with impossible political pressures as humanity tried to manage their accidental empire. He thought about the millions of humans living on colonies across the galaxy, unaware that ancient powers were planning their extinction. He thought about the memorial wall and the names of beings who had died because of human weapons. There's another option, he said slowly. We could deactivate the quantum disruptor network, publicly demonstrate that we're dismantling our superweapons, show the Watchers that we choose peace over power. Emma stared at him in shock. Admiral, that would leave Earth defenseless. If the other powers unite against us without our secret weapons, humanity could be wiped out. Maybe that's what we deserve, Jake said quietly. We wanted to protect our species, and we ended up threatening the entire galaxy. Perhaps it's time to pay the price for what we've become. Dr. Grant shook her head firmly. No, Admiral. We created the quantum disruptors to save lives, not to destroy them. If ancient aliens want to judge us for defending ourselves, then we'll defend ourselves against them too. Admiral Chris Taylor walked through the construction yards of Luna Station, watching teams of workers assemble humanity's first post-war warships. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the Corellian fleet, and the galaxy had not remained still. The balance of power that had existed for centuries was crumbling, and humanity found itself at the center of a new order whether they wanted it or not. The ships taking shape around him represented a new generation of human engineering. Still armed with conventional weapons for the most part, but built with lessons learned from studying alien technology traded by their new allies. The quantum disruptor network remained Earth's most closely guarded secret, but conventional improvements had made human vessels competitive with anything in the galaxy. Admiral, called Captain Susan Wright as she approached from the administrative section. Susan commanded diplomatic missions throughout human space, negotiating the dozens of requests for alliance that arrived daily. We just received confirmation from the Kepler Union. They're ready to sign the Mutual Defense Treaty. Chris nodded, though he felt the familiar weight of responsibility that came with each new commitment. The Kepler Union would be the 12th species to formally join what the galaxy had begun calling the Human Alliance. Each treaty brought benefits in trade and technology, but also obligations that stretched Earth's resources thin. Any word from the Draconis Mining Guild? He asked. They're still debating internally, but their preliminary offers are impressive. Exclusive mining rights to 3 systems rich in rare metals, plus technical data on their asteroid processing techniques, in exchange for protection against Corellian retaliation raids. The mention of Corellian raids brought a frown to Chris's face. The Empire had not collapsed entirely after losing their fleet, but they had fragmenting rapidly. Regional governors were declaring independence, minor species were rebelling, and what remained of the central government struggled to maintain control over their core worlds. This fragmentation had created its own problems. Rogue Corellian commanders launched raids against former subject species, trying to reclaim lost territories. Pirates and mercenaries filled the power vacuum in border regions. The galaxy was more chaotic now than it had been in centuries. Dr. Lisa Grant, now Director of Advanced Defense Research, joined them as they toured the construction bays. She looked tired but satisfied with her new responsibilities. Her team had spent months developing non-lethal versions of quantum disruptor technology for peacekeeping operations. The new crowd control satellites are ready for deployment, she reported. They can disable ship systems without destroying the vessels themselves. Perfect for stopping raiders or pirates without causing unnecessary casualties. How many systems are requesting them? Chris asked. 47 at last count. Everyone wants protection. But they're also terrified of giving us too much influence in their space. It's a delicate balance. Indeed it was. Humanity walked a fine line between protector and conqueror in the eyes of the galaxy. Their mysterious victory over the Corellians had made them the premier military power almost overnight, but with that status came suspicions about their ultimate intentions. Colonel Rick Barnes, Earth's Special Operations Commander, appeared on Chris's communicator with an urgent expression. Admiral, we have a situation developing in the Tarsus system. Corellian raiders are attacking the research stations there. How many ships? Chris asked. 12 light cruisers, moving fast and hitting hard. The Tarsans are requesting immediate assistance under the Mutual Defense Clause. Chris felt the familiar tension of command decisions. The Tarsus system had signed their alliance treaty only 2 weeks ago, specifically to gain protection from this kind of attack. If humanity failed to respond, their credibility with other potential allies would suffer. But every military action they took reinforced the image of Earth as the galaxy's new enforcer. Deploy the Roosevelt and her escort group, he ordered. Rules of engagement are to disable and capture if possible, destroy only if necessary. We want prisoners who can testify about who's ordering these raids. As Rick acknowledged the order and began coordinating the response, Chris thought about how much had changed since that day 6 months ago. Admiral Jake Morrison, now retired, had warned him about the burden of power. Every decision humanity made rippled across the galaxy, affecting the lives of billions of beings they had never met. Captain Susan Wright pulled up a holographic display showing the current political situation. Green markers indicated human alliance members, while red showed remaining Corellian territories. Yellow marked neutral systems, and gray represented areas too chaotic to classify. The Serpentis hegemony has been probing our outer colonies, she reported. Nothing aggressive yet, just reconnaissance flights and diplomatic inquiries. They want to know if we're planning to expand beyond our current borders. What did you tell them? That Earth has no territorial ambitions beyond ensuring the safety of human colonies and our allies. But I don't think they believe us. Chris understood their skepticism. Every major power in galactic history had claimed peaceful intentions while building their empires. The Corellians themselves had started as a small confederation promoting trade and cooperation. Power had a way of corrupting even the best intentions. Dr. Grant activated another display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. We're detecting unusual energy signatures in several systems. Multiple species are working on what appear to be superweapon projects. The Tellurian Federation, the Andromedans, even some of the smaller powers. They're trying to replicate what they think we did to the Corellian fleet, Chris realized. Exactly. Most of them are focusing on hyperspace weapons or gravity manipulation, technology. They're nowhere close to understanding quantum disruptors, but some of their research is concerning. The irony wasn't lost on Chris. Humanity's secret weapon had triggered an arms race among species trying to achieve the same level of destructive capability. If they succeeded, the galaxy would become far more dangerous than it had ever been. Priority message arrived from Earth bearing President Mary Collins's personal seal. Chris read it quickly, his expression growing grave as he absorbed the contents. "What is it?" Susan asked. "The Galactic Council is voting on Resolution 2847 next week. A formal investigation into the Carillion Fleet incident with mandatory cooperation from all member species. They want to inspect our military facilities and interview our personnel." Dr. Grant paled at the implications. A thorough investigation would inevitably uncover evidence of the quantum disruptor program. The sophisticated camouflage that had hidden the satellites wouldn't fool dedicated scientific analysis. "Can we refuse?" she asked, not without confirming. "There's suspicions," Chris replied. "If we have nothing to hide, why wouldn't we cooperate?" Susan pulled up legal documents on her display. "There are precedents for claiming national security exemptions, but using them would damage our relationships with alliance members. They joined us partly because they believed we were more trustworthy than the old powers." Chris found himself facing the same dilemma that had plagued human leaders for months. How do you maintain the illusion of normalcy when you possess the most powerful weapon in galactic history? How do you build trust while keeping secrets that could reshape civilization? Admiral Rick Barnes reported from the Tactical Center. "The Roosevelt has engaged the Carillion raiders. 3 enemy vessels disabled, the rest are retreating. No human casualties, minimal damage to Tarsan facilities." Prisoners. 47 Carillion personnel in custody. Initial interrogations suggest they're operating independently, not under orders from any recognized government. Pirates using military equipment from the fleet dissolution. More complications. If the raiders were truly independent, humanity couldn't hold the Carillion government responsible. But if they were operating under covert orders, it meant the Empire was using proxies to test human responses while maintaining plausible deniability. Dr. Grant's communicator chimed with an urgent message from her research team. She read it quickly, her expression shifting from concern to outright alarm. "What now?" Chris asked. "Long-range sensors have detected massive construction activity in the void between, that empty region beyond the galactic rim. The energy signatures are unlike anything we've seen before. Either someone has developed new technology or something else is out there." Susan checked her diplomatic files. "No known species claims territory in that region. It's been considered. Empty space for thousands of years." Chris felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had spent months dealing with the consequences of demonstrating their power to known civilizations. But what if there were unknown civilizations out there, watching and planning their own responses to the new galactic order? "How long before we have more detailed information?" he asked. "My team is assembling a long-range reconnaissance mission," Dr. Grant replied. "But the void between is months away at best hyperspace speed. Whatever's happening out there, we won't know details for some time." As if the situation weren't complicated enough, humanity now faced the possibility of threats from beyond the known galaxy. Chris looked out at the construction yards where new ships took shape daily, wondering if Ambassador Helen Rogers stood before the Galactic Council, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her. The Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Nexus Prime could hold representatives from every known species in the galaxy. Today it seemed like most of them had come to hear humanity's explanation for what had happened at Earth. The news had spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the Carillion fleet's destruction, every major civilization had received reports of the impossible victory, 847 warships gone in less than a minute. No wreckage, No survivors except for one traumatized admiral who spoke of ships simply vanishing into nothing. Helen looked across the assembly at the Corellian delegation. They sat in shocked silence, their delegation reduced to a handful of minor officials after losing most of their military leadership in the disaster. Grand Admiral Zafek had been returned to them 3 days ago, but his reports were dismissed as the ravings of a broken mind. "The chair recognizes Ambassador Rogers of the Human Systems," announced Speaker Valdris, an elderly Centauran whose species had mediated galactic disputes for centuries. Helen stepped forward to the central podium, her heart racing despite years of diplomatic training. The prepared statement in her hand felt inadequate for what she was about to attempt. How do you explain the unexplainable without revealing secrets that could reshape the galaxy? "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through. "The vast chamber, the human systems deeply regret the tragic loss of life that occurred in our home system 4 days ago. We extend our sincere condolences to the families and clans of those who perished." A rumble of discontent rose from the Corellian section. Delegate Vorthak, their acting speaker, stood and pointed an accusing claw at Helen. "Regret? Your species destroys our greatest fleet and speaks of regret? We demand to know what weapon you used, what treaty you violated, what dark alliance gave you such power." Helen maintained her composure, though inside she felt the familiar chill of walking a diplomatic tightrope. The Corellian fleet suffered a catastrophic hyperspace malfunction while attempting an unprovoked attack on Earth. Our scientists believe that assembling so many ships with active hyperspace drives in such close formation created a resonance cascade that destabilized local space-time. The explanation sounded thin even to her own ears, but it was the story Earth's government had agreed upon. Captain Paul Davis, commanding the diplomatic vessel Unity in orbit above Nexus Prime, had spent the journey here helping her refine every word. "Impossible," Vorthak snarled. "No hyperspace malfunction could affect so many ships simultaneously. Our engineers have reviewed every detail of fleet operations. There was no cascade, no resonance, no malfunction. Your species attacked us with some unknown weapon." Murmurs filled the chamber as delegates discussed the accusations in dozens of languages. Helen noticed that not all the reactions were hostile. Several species that had suffered under Corellian expansion looked almost hopeful at the suggestion that someone had finally stood up to the Empire. Speaker Valdris called for order with his ceremonial staff. The human ambassador will be allowed to complete her statement without interruption. Helen nodded gratefully. The human systems have never sought conflict with any galactic power. We have always preferred trade and peaceful cooperation to warfare. What happened to the Corellian fleet was a tragedy that we would not wish upon any species. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled delegates. Some watched her with suspicion, others with curiosity, and a few with what might have been respect. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted dramatically, and everyone was trying to understand what it meant. "However," Helen continued, "we cannot ignore the fact that this fleet was assembled specifically to attack Earth. The Corellian Empire has made no secret of their intention to punish humanity for refusing to pay tribute or accept subjugation. We defended ourselves as any species would when faced with extinction." The Zeridian delegate, whose people had been conquered by the Corellians 50 years earlier, spoke up from her section. "Does the human systems possess weapons capable of destroying entire fleets?" This was the question Helen had been dreading. The truth would terrify half the galaxy and invite attacks from the other half. The lie might not hold up under scrutiny, but it was their only option. The human systems possess only conventional defensive weapons, she said carefully. We have no super weapons, no planet killers, no technology beyond what is known to galactic science. What happened to the Carillion fleet was an accident of physics, not an act of war. As she spoke, Helen thought about the reports she had read before leaving Earth. Admiral Jake Morrison's account of those 47 seconds. Dr. Lisa Grant's technical analysis of the quantum disruptor network. The weapon was real, and it was more terrifying than anything the galaxy had ever seen. But revealing its existence would change everything. Species would either kneel before humanity or unite to destroy them. The delicate balance that had kept peace for centuries would shatter overnight. President Mary Collins, watching the proceedings from Earth, had made the decision personally. The truth about Project Prometheus would remain classified at the highest levels. As far as the galaxy was concerned, the Carillion fleet had suffered an unprecedented accident. After Helen's statement, delegate after delegate took the floor to demand answers, threaten investigations, or pledge their support for humanity. The Vorthan Confederacy offered to share their hyperspace research to prevent future accidents. The Epsilon Collective suggested a joint scientific commission to study the phenomenon, but it was the smaller species that caught Helen's attention. The Kepler Union, recently liberated from Carillion rule by their fleet's destruction, formally requested a mutual defense treaty with humanity. The Draconis Mining Guild offered exclusive trading rights in exchange for protection from Carillion retaliation. As the session continued, Helen realized that something fundamental had changed in galactic politics. For 3 centuries, the major powers had dominated through fear and superior numbers. Smaller civilizations had been forced to choose sides or face conquest. Now, suddenly, humanity had demonstrated that even the mightiest fleet could be defeated. It didn't matter how the victory had been achieved. What mattered was that it was possible. Captain Paul Davis contacted her during a recess, his face appearing on her private communicator. Helen, we're receiving dozens of requests for private meetings. Half the minor powers want to discuss alliance possibilities. And the major powers? The Tellurian Federation is demanding access to our hyperspace research. The Serpentis hegemony has recalled all their fleets to defensive positions. The Andromedans are requesting an emergency meeting with President Collins. Helen felt the weight of unintended consequences settling on her shoulders. They had saved Earth, but they had also destabilized the entire galaxy. Every species was now recalculating their position based on humanity's mysterious new capabilities. That evening, in her quarters aboard the Unity, Helen received a secure transmission from Earth. President Collins appeared on her screen, looking tired but determined. "Helen, how are they taking it?" "About as well as we expected. Fear, suspicion, and opportunity in equal measure. The Carillions want blood, but they're too shaken to act immediately. The smaller powers see a chance to break free from the old hierarchies. And the weapon? No one believes the hyperspace malfunction story, but they can't prove otherwise. Dr. Grant's camouflage worked perfectly. As far as anyone can tell, we don't possess any unusual technology." President Collins nodded slowly. "Good. We need time to figure out what we've become. A week ago, we were a minor power struggling to survive. Now we're apparently the strongest military force in the galaxy. We need to decide what to do with that responsibility." Helen thought about Grand Admiral Zefek, the proud Carillion commander who had been returned to his people a broken shell of his former self. He spoke constantly of ships vanishing into nothing, of weapons that violated the laws of physics. His own government had declared him mentally unfit for duty. "Ma'am," she said finally, "what if they find out the truth? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. For now, we maintain the fiction and hope the galaxy doesn't tear itself apart while we figure out what comes next." The transmission ended, leaving Helen alone with her thoughts. Outside her window, the lights of Nexus Prime glittered in the darkness, representing hundreds of species trying to understand a universe that had suddenly become much more dangerous and unpredictable. Humanity had wanted only to be left alone. Instead, they had become the most feared civilization in galactic history. Helen wondered if that was victory or tragedy, and whether there was really any difference between the two. Captain Roy Mitchell gripped the armrests of his command chair as the massive Carillion fleet materialized on the main display. 847 warships hung in space like a deadly constellation, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of Sol. Each vessel was larger than Earth's biggest battleship, armed with weapons that could level cities. "Distance to lead elements?" Roy asked his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kate Brooks. 12 million kilometers in closing, Kate replied, her fingers dancing across her control panel. "They're maintaining formation, advancing at 0.7 light speed." In the depths of Earth Command, Admiral Jake Morrison watched the same displays with growing tension. The Carillion fleet moved with the confidence of predators who had never faced serious resistance. Their battle formation was textbook perfect, overlapping fields of fire that would protect each ship while maximizing their combined firepower. Dr. Lisa Grant stood at her monitoring station, watching the quantum disruptor network respond to her commands. The satellites had been drifting silently in the asteroid belt for months, their power cores dormant to avoid detection. Now they hummed with barely contained energy, waiting for the precise moment when the enemy fleet would enter the kill zone. "Admiral," Kate reported from her tactical station, "the Carillions are broadcasting on all frequencies." The main screen shifted to show Grand Admiral Zefek, a tall alien with scaled skin and predatory eyes. His uniform was covered in medals and honors from a dozen conquered worlds. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship bustled with activity as his crew prepared for what they expected to be an easy victory. "Humans," Zefek spoke in heavily accented English, "you have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. Disable your orbital defenses, ground your military vessels, and prepare for occupation. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the Carillion Empire rules this galaxy." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Jake looked around at his officers, seeing determination mixed with fear on their faces. They all knew the odds. Even if every human ship in the system fought to the last man, they couldn't scratch the Carillion Armada. "Dr. Grant," Jake said quietly, "what's the status of Prometheus?" Lisa checked her readings one more time. "All satellites are online and responding. The quantum field generators are charged and ready. We just need the fleet to move into optimal range." "How will we know when that happens?" "The computer will calculate the best moment automatically. When activated, the disruptors will create gravitational distortions around each target simultaneously. The effect should be immediate." Roy watched his tactical display as the Carillion ships continued their advance. They moved with the arrogance of a species that had never lost a major battle. For 300 years, the Carillion Empire had expanded across the galaxy, crushing any civilization that dared resist their rule. "Admiral," Kate called from her station, "enemy fleet is entering the asteroid belt. Range 8 million kilometers." Jake felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air of the command center. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If Prometheus failed, Earth would fall within hours. If it worked, humanity would survive, but face questions they weren't prepared to answer. 6 million kilometers, Kate reported. They're maintaining formation. No sign they've detected our satellites. The Carillion ships passed through the outer edge of the asteroid belt like sharks swimming through a school of fish. Their sensors swept the area constantly, looking for hidden weapons or surprise attacks. But the quantum disruptor satellites appeared to be nothing more than ordinary space debris, their true nature masked by sophisticated camouflage. 5 million kilometers. 4 million. 3 million. Lisa's hands hovered over her control panel as the computer calculated targeting solutions for each enemy vessel. The quantum disruptors needed precise positioning to work effectively. Too close and the gravitational distortions would interfere with each other. Too far and the effect would be too weak to guarantee destruction. 2 million kilometers, Kate announced. Computer shows optimal firing position in 30 seconds. Jake opened a communication channel to every human ship in the system. All vessels, this is Admiral Morrison. In 30 seconds, we're going to find out if our scientists are as smart as they think they are. Whatever happens, remember that we fight for every human being in the galaxy. The countdown appeared on every screen throughout the command center. 20 seconds. The Carillion fleet continued its advance, completely unaware of the trap closing around them. 15 seconds. Grand Admiral Zefek probably expected to be in orbit around Earth within the hour, dictating surrender terms to the human government. 10 seconds. Lisa's finger moved to the activation switch. The quantum disruptor network was fully charged and ready. Each satellite had locked onto multiple targets, creating an invisible web of destruction around the advancing fleet. 5 seconds. Roy found, himself holding his breath. Kate's hands were steady on her controls, ready to record whatever happened next. The moment that would decide humanity's fate was almost here. 0. Lisa pressed the activation switch. For a split second, nothing seemed to happen. The Carillion fleet continued its advance, weapons charging for the final assault on Earth's orbital defenses. Then space itself began to twist. Microscopic tears appeared in the fabric of reality around each enemy ship. The quantum disruptors created gravitational anomalies that pulled matter inward with irresistible force. The proud Carillion battleships, each one a marvel of alien engineering, began to crumple like paper in a giant's fist. Gravitational collapse detected across the enemy formation, Kate reported, her voice filled with amazement. All ships are experiencing structural failure. The largest Carillion dreadnought, Zefek's flagship, twisted into an impossible shape as its hull buckled under forces no material could withstand. The ship's reactor core, compressed beyond its safety limits, erupted in a brief flash of light. Before being swallowed by the collapsing mass, across the fleet, the same scene repeated 847 times. Massive warships that had conquered dozens of worlds simply ceased to exist, their matter compressed into points of infinite density before vanishing into quantum foam. "Time to complete destruction?" Jake asked. Kate checked her instruments twice, before answering. 47 seconds, Admiral. The entire fleet is gone." The command center erupted in cheers, but Jake felt only a cold emptiness in his stomach. They had just witnessed the complete annihilation of nearly 1 million sentient beings. The Carillions had come to destroy Earth, but that didn't make their deaths any less final. "Sir," Kate called out, "I'm detecting one escape pod. Looks like it ejected from the flagship just before the collapse. On the main screen, a small Corellian survival craft tumbled through space, its occupant presumably Grand Admiral Zefek himself. The pod's emergency beacon broadcasted a distress signal that would reach Corellian space within hours. "Should we destroy it?" Roy asked. Jake considered the question carefully. Killing Zefek would eliminate the only witness to what had happened here, but it would also mean crossing a line that he wasn't sure humanity should cross. "No," he said finally. "Send a rescue ship. We'll pick him up." Dr. Grant powered down the quantum disruptor network, and the satellites returned to their dormant state among the asteroids. Within minutes, there was no evidence that the most powerful weapon in human history had ever been activated. The space where the Corellian fleet had been was now empty, except for scattered particles and the lone escape pod. In 47 seconds, humanity had gone from facing extinction to achieving the most complete military victory in galactic history. But as Jake looked at the empty space on his displays, he wondered if they had won anything at all, or simply become something they had never wanted to be. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth Command, watching the pale blue dot of his home planet rotate slowly beneath him. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 17 star systems, building colonies and mining stations wherever they could find resources. But Earth remained the heart of it all, the center of human civilization in a galaxy that didn't much care for their presence. The morning briefing had been troubling. Intelligence reports from the outer colonies painted a dark picture. The Corellian Empire, rulers of nearly 200 star systems, had grown tired of human expansion. For the past 50 years, humanity had ignored their demands for tribute and submission. Now it seemed the Corellians had decided to teach Earth a lesson. Jake turned as the door hissed open behind him. Dr. Lisa Grant walked in, her face showing the stress of months spent working on classified projects. She carried a data pad clutched against her chest like a shield. Behind her came General Sam Parker, the gruff chairman of the Unified Earth Defense Council, and Commander Amy Stone, captain of the reconnaissance vessel New Horizon. "Admiral," Sam said without ceremony, "we need to talk." They moved to the secure briefing room, where holographic displays showed the current positions of human ships throughout known space. Jake noticed how small their presence looked compared to the vast territories controlled by alien empires. The Corellian Empire alone controlled more than half the galaxy's inhabited systems. Amy activated her ship's sensor data, and the room filled with three-dimensional star charts. Red markers appeared at the edge of Corellian space, clustered around their primary shipyards. "My crew detected massive energy signatures here, here, and here," she said, pointing to the markers. "The Corellians are building something big." "How big?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Our best estimate puts it at over 800 capital ships, all battleship class or larger." Amy's voice remained steady, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "They're calling it the Punishment Fleet." General Parker leaned forward. "Our sources inside Corellian space confirm it. Grand Admiral Zefek himself is commanding the fleet. They're not planning a simple raid or blockade. They want to destroy Earth completely." Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. 800 battleships represented more firepower than humanity had ever faced. Their own fleet consisted of maybe 40 capital ships scattered across 17 systems. Even if they recalled every vessel, every fighter, every armed transport, they would be outnumbered 20-1. "How long do we have?" he asked. 3 days, maybe 4, Amy replied. They're massing at the Carillion border fortress of Drakhi. Once they're assembled, it's a straight jump to Earth. No stops, no delays. Dr. Grant finally spoke up. There might be another option. She activated. Her datapad and new displays appeared showing technical schematics that made Jake's head spin. Project Prometheus is ready for testing. Jake had heard whispers about Prometheus, a black project funded directly by the Defense Council. Even with his security clearance, the details had been kept from him. What exactly are we talking about? Doctor? Lisa hesitated, glancing at General Parker, who nodded for her to continue. Quantum disruptor technology. We've positioned a network of satellites throughout the asteroid belt, hidden among the rocks. Each satellite can generate microscopic tears in space-time. When activated simultaneously, they can create gravitational anomalies around enemy ships. Gravitational anomalies? Jake repeated. The ships would implode, Lisa said quietly. Complete structural collapse in seconds. No survivors, no wreckage. The room fell silent. Jake stared at the technical displays, trying to understand what he was seeing. Humanity had always prided itself on being defenders, not aggressors. This weapon sounded like something from nightmares. Have you tested it? He asked. Only on unmanned targets, Lisa admitted. Asteroids? Derelict ships? The results were complete. General Parker stood and walked to the displays showing Earth. Admiral, we're facing extinction. The Carillions have made it clear they consider us a disease to be wiped out. We can either use every weapon at our disposal, or we can watch our species burn. Jake thought about the colonies, the millions of humans living on worlds light years from Earth. He thought about the children growing up on New Terra, the miners working the asteroid fields of the Centauri system, the explorers pushing ever deeper into unknown space. All of it would die with Earth. What do you need from me? He asked finally. Authorization to activate the defense grid, General Parker said, and a prayer that it works. Over the next 3 days, Earth became a hive of activity. Civilian populations were evacuated from orbital stations and moved to underground shelters. The few warships in the system took defensive positions around the planet, though everyone knew they were mainly for show. If the Carillion fleet broke through the defense grid, conventional weapons would be useless. Jake spent most of his time in the command center, watching long-range sensors for any sign of the approaching enemy. The waiting was the hardest part. Reports came in from the outer colonies as they detected the massive Carillion fleet moving through hyperspace. 847 ships, all armed with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Dr. Grant worked around the clock, making final adjustments to the quantum disruptor network. Her team had spent 5 years developing the technology, and now they would learn if their theories held up against reality. The satellites were invisible to conventional sensors, powered down and drifting like ordinary space debris until the moment of activation. Commander Amy Stone took her ship to the edge of the system, ready to monitor the enemy's arrival. Her crew volunteered to stay, despite the obvious danger. If the defense grid failed, the new horizon would be humanity's last witness. On the 3rd day, the alerts began. Hyperspace distortions detected at the system's edge. Jake watched the displays as hundreds of red markers appeared, representing the largest invasion fleet ever assembled. The Carillion ships formed perfect battle lines, their weapons charging as they prepared to advance on Earth. Grand Admiral Zephek's voice came over the communication channels, speaking in accented but clear English. Humans of Earth, you have defied the Carillion Empire for the last time. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will burn your world to ash." Jake looked around the command center at his officers and crew. These people had devoted their lives to protecting Earth and humanity. Now they faced a test that would determine whether their species survived or joined the countless others that had been erased by alien empires. "Dr. Grant," he said into his communicator, "is Prometheus ready?" "All systems online, Admiral. Awaiting your command." Jake took a deep breath and gave the order that would change everything. "Activate the defense grid.